corporate servers to really get access to that, assuming there is a connection or connectivity, wired or wireless. So in other words, this, therefore, if it has enough capability and if we get our act together, and in other parts of the world, if we get our act together, like in Silicon Valley, this should be rightfully so more than a server, but it's not. However, therefore, the task is that you guys have to think about, mostly in software, is how you can innovate beyond what you're doing today. And so this is the key thing that I want to emphasize as we embark on this discussion. It's all about innovation at the end of the day. Between the power loss or the heat generated, because when those electrons move at a certain frequency in this device, it generates heat. And the higher the frequency, therefore, it gets hotter. You have a lot of memory. If you don't optimize your code, then we have to load up more memory here. That's all heat. So it's not a matter of designing hardware anymore to minimize the cost and power consumption, which all adds up at the end of the day to what you pay for. Incredible amount of sophistication now is going into intelligence when we and we tend to do things like simulation, because we're used to simulating all of the semiconductors, and it doesn't matter whether they're 10 transistor. We do have to simulate whether it works. The same thing is happening in software. I'm sure you guys are using some tools already. At the very least, if it is used for debugging, but you do have to simulate and relate it to the hardware. There's a lot of opportunity for you guys to handle or to fix a lot of the issues that's happening here or any platform, servers, and so on. But how do you do that? And guess what? It is science. It is mathematics. It is physics. In other words, at some point in time in the future, software designers will have to understand frequencies, megahertz, functionality, architectures. Because you are part of the problem at the end of the day. The hardware is no longer going to absorb all solving those issues. It has to now, the software will have to be part of the entire solution. So if I load up a database program here, I will be looking for half the footprint of what you are using or you are generating for the industry. So it's all about innovation, therefore. I think we all need to go back to science. Computer science in this case, data structures, algorithms, and so on. Okay, so let's keep that as a theme.
Right. But I'm really going to talk to you today about my observations moving back to the Philippines, less than a year ago. I moved back December last year, really by a challenge of my current boss. His name is Manny Pangilinan, who's the chairman of PLDT. When I talked to him about a year and a half ago, he just told me, you know what, Earl, you're in Cisco now. Isn't it time to come back home and probably try to create Silicon Valley here? Right. So I was in Cisco's global headquarters, and my mission there was to create the billion-dollar business for the company, and my mission now is to create the billion-dollar business for the country. Right. So that's really where I'm at, and that's why we launched, for example, an incubator fund with 500 million pesos. Not $5 million, called Idea Space. And it was really a proposal between me and my co-founder, who's the CIO of Meralco, the biggest utility in Manila, to then jumpstart this process, because we actually are having a very early stage investment is almost non-existent in the Philippines for people who do not have connections. So that's what we said, let's move to this journey to then create a professional global standard for early stage startups. And why am I here in the Outsourcing Summit? I asked myself that, right? But I think it's really about, if we then grow a healthy early stage ecosystem. Some of them might fail, some of them might succeed. But for those looking for employment, you'll have top caliber talent, right? Because most of them will be self-taught. Most of them will try to compete at a global standard. And I think that's what everybody here in this outsourcing summit should think of, right? That actually creating a startup ecosystem is not a threat to your potential labor pool, your potential opportunity, right? And another big, I was in Stanford, and I guess Dad, you know my professor Andy Ratcliffe.
Oh, you're in trouble.
And he always said one thing: in tornadoes, chickens will fly. Right? I don't know if you, just imagine that, no? Chickens flying. So what brought me back here too is that we have a lot of macroeconomic, very interesting indicators that we, as Filipinos, or at least for our guest here, the Philippines, has some good things at its, and what's the opposite of hand with backwind? Okay, I'm making up some words now. It's because, what? Tailwind, yeah, sorry, thanks Dalo. It's because 50% of our population is under 23. I don't know if that was already considered in one of the keynotes, but that for me is a big economic indicator. Not because of just demographics, but because most of them will be digital savvy. Most of them will be self-taught, exposed in the internet, looking at courses that is also taught in Stanford or MIT. All of them under 23, that is 50% of them. Coupled with our economic growth, right? I think second or third highest in Asia for the past quarter. Just a lot of good indicators. I think it's the right time for us to invest in the Philippines, right? So I'm also gonna share some stories now of some of my journeys the past 8 months. Because as part of my advocacy, we go all around the Philippines, in universities specifically, in some high schools, to then teach technopreneurship, or at least give an exposure of technopreneurship to people almost all below 20. A lot of them usually are hesitant to think of not going to a corporate job, but then usually after the boot camp, all of them feel inspired. And the good indicator is that all the boot camps we had were always sold out. The boot camps are 100 to 200 students trying to learn about technopreneurship, and all of them were sold out. So that's a good indicator, and we've gone all around the country. But I'll share to you maybe another story. We met a developer in Davao, who's one of the biggest cities in the south. And he won one of our hackathons, I guess. He digitized or made the mobile version of what it's called Project Nova, which is the weather station app, I guess, a weather station web app for the Philippines. So we invited him to come to Manila and said, we should present because we'll introduce you to the Department of Science and Technology. So he said, okay, that's fine. And every time he shows me his app, it's always in a mobile phone. I was like, where's your emulator? Right? Where is the thing so we can play around with it, etc. He told me one thing that shocked me. Sir, I don't have a computer. I'm like, how in the world did you teach yourself Android programming? Either I borrow my friend's laptop or internet cafes. So again, I think the key point in that story is that there is talent in the Philippines waiting for big opportunities, right? And most of them will be self-taught. Most of them will just try to find how to survive, right? Most of them will actually, right, have very good skills. So I think these are the things that we have to take into consideration when investing in a country. Is the youth hungry? Right? Is our youth capable? Right? I guess there's no, and I was in the Valley too, and people always try to negotiate six-figure salaries with me out of Stanford. I don't know, right? Where here, I hired the #1 ECE board passer, right, into Smart. And I gave him 50% higher than the normal EC graduate. And he never stopped saying thank you to me until to this day. But he graduated and passed the board #1 in the whole country. Right? And I think, in HR, I probably can't disclose, but it's in the range probably of $500 a month. Right? I'm kind of just speculating. Right? Because I gave my, I guess, executive blessing. Right? So that's the type of talent that we have. I think that's about the attitude. So, you know, and I think there's also some opportunities in the Philippines today. Actually, my second month here, I was a judge of one of the university competitions run by my company. It was like 120 entries, all university projects. And what I saw there was quite amazing. I saw an application which eventually won the competition, where they digitized. We have here the International Rice Research Institute. It's a global institute headquartered in Los Baños. And they digitized how to test if a palay, which is basically the stalk of the rice, is healthy or not. So all you have to do is to take a picture of this, rice plant, and then know if it's healthy. These are, again, 20-year-old students, right? And this is real stories, right? So, I guess I got the warning there. So, you know, I just want to stress the point, right? That honestly, we have a very, very early startup and maybe even developer ecosystem in the Philippines. Even mobile-based, right? We're just trying to catch up with the world. But I think it's high time for us as an industry to then invest in this youth, because we don't know, right? Like what everybody says. We actually might outsource to some of these kids 5, 10 years from now. So let's be good to them and let's support them. Thanks so much.